Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining the final panel here at Government CIO on the state of mind for the CXOs that are responsible in some way for cybersecurity at their agencies. Joining me is going to be Eric Sanders, Chief Risk Management Division at NGA, Mark Haken, Deputy CIO at NSA, Amy Hazeltine at HHS, Executive Director for Enterprise Services, and then Lisa Belt from DISA, Cybersecurity Development Executive. So thank you all for joining the panel. The way we're going to do this, I'm going to have each individual introduce themselves and talk about their role a little bit at their agency, and then we've got some specific initiatives and impact activities that they're working on specifically at their agency that they'll be able to talk about. And I think this is really good in the backdrop of the discussions that we've been having all day, whether Christopher Krebs or Tom Ridge or the USDS discussion. Basically there's a lot of strategy, whether it's the White House strategy, the DoD strategy, DHS has a strategy for cybersecurity. There are programmatic changes going on at agencies as they align to the cybersecurity framework and other initiatives that are driving risk-based decision making. But there's also a lot of ongoing operational activities that are really the blocking and tackling of cybersecurity at each of these departments and agencies that have ultimate responsibility for protecting infrastructure of .gov and .mil. So I think it's important to hear more on the tactical side also of what's going on at the agencies from their perspectives and the initiatives that are making an impact at the agency to improve our cybersecurity posture. So with that, if we could go down the panel and just give a minute or two to introduce yourself, and then I'll come back around with a question for each of you.
Fantastic. Eric Sanders, good morning. My organization within NGA is responsible for assessing risk and making authorization decisions for all of the agency's IT. Obviously, how we define IT changes, and we're investing heavily in cloud and platform as a service and building out capabilities. And so one of our challenges is, how do we can't handle services and smaller capabilities that are designed to exist on our platform as a service environment like we do traditional IT. And so one of our biggest challenges has been and continues to be, how do we appropriately assess risk, do it smarter, do it faster, and enable mission in a more timely fashion.
Thank you. Mark?
Good morning. My name is Mark Haken. I am the Deputy Chief Information Officer for the National Security Agency. Our office is the nexus of oversight for all the IT, both business and mission IT management at the agency. It includes the Chief Information Security Officer and also the Chief Data Officer. When we're talking CXOs, it's the nexus of where all the CXOs are at the agency. Between all the security oversight over both and then the management of the data and the large-scale analytics that go ahead along with our mission space. I've been in this role about 6 months. Prior to that, I had the privilege of serving with Lisa at DISA for about a year, working in the National Background Investigation System development. And my background at NSA, with the 11 years I've been there, has been on the information assurance side. So I'm using this as an opportunity to learn what the other side of the agency actually does. So it's a good learning experience for me as well as quite a challenge.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Hazeltine. I serve as the Deputy CIO for Enterprise Services at the Department of Health and Human Services. It's a long title, but what it really means is that when it comes to technology, my organization and the purview of my particular position is to focus on strategy, policy, and governance as it relates to the IT portfolio of the department. I've been in this role for about a year and a half. I have come to it from a variety of different standpoints, really mostly on the management side. So served in the Chief Financial Officer role in that organization, served in grants and acquisitions policy and systems areas, as well as some of the activities that are in our behavioral health system at HHS. So this role is particularly exciting because it gives us a chance to really think about how technology can and should enable mission and how it should make our world and our business run in a more effective and efficient manner. So very, very appreciative to be in the panel this morning.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lisa Belt. I'm the Acting Director for Cyber Development at the Defense Information Systems Agency. My boss is Vice Admiral Nancy Norton. She's dual-hatted. She's not only the director of our agency, but she's also on the staff of U.S. Cybercom. So she's got two bosses. On the Cybercom operational side, General Nakasone, and on the DoD DISA side, the DoD CIO, Mr. Dana Deasy. So my organization is responsible primarily for developing material solutions for enterprise-level defensive cyber operations capabilities, products and services. In that, we've got perimeter defenses, joint regional security stack, regional defenses, endpoint defenses to include mobility, and then some of the underpinning enablers, if you will. Partnered with NSA, DISA runs is the co-lead on DoD PKI, cross-domain solutions, and then some aspects of workforce development as well. And I'm hoping that some of this good experience and knowledge will rub off on me and float this way.
We're on the right side of the panel, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. So, Eric, I'll start with you. There's been a good bit of dialogue today about risk management, making better, risk-based decisions from a cybersecurity perspective, being able to proactively look at indicators and feed that into the way you're looking at the risks for your specific agency mission. Can you explain to us, some of the automation enablement that you're putting in place with at NGA to, kind of make that happen?
Absolutely. So automation, obviously, we're not there yet. We're not where we want to be today, but we're working to get there. So one of our challenges, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, is to get to smarter, faster authorization decisions. But to do that, we really had to kind of step back and look at, are we taking the right kinds of risks in the right kinds of places? It's never about getting to, zero risk, and we'll never get there. So it's about taking the right amount of risk, right? The right kinds of risks for a particular system and its operating environment and the data you're trying to protect and so on and so forth. So we constructed a framework that kind of right sizes, security control, compliance, security requirements with, the system, the environment's going to be operating in, its ability to, and its subscription to enterprise services. We're relying very heavily on enterprise services to satisfy a lot of our security requirements. So it takes a lot of things into account, and then, we only then levy and require a subset of security controls to be assessed as part of that authorization decision for that particular capability. So the framework, it's been something that we talked about iteration earlier. It's something that, we started off, we decided, we're going to go forward with this, and then as we learned, we improved it and matured it, and it's gotten to the point now where we're sharing it with other agencies, and it's being received very well. But to complement that, we had to fix our GRC tool. It was mentioned earlier about human-centered design, and one thing that was not really designed for our users, our customers, is the GRC tool we were forcing them to use. So that was part of the pain. It wasn't just, the implementation of all these security controls and all the requirements they had to meet in order to get an ATO, if you will. It was, the tool that they had to use to go about doing that was, to put it mildly, not consumer friendly. So we've invested a lot of time and energy in that, and I think now we've got a tool that we've rolled out very recently that really simplifies the process, makes it clearer, makes it easier to use, and so far the feedback's been great. But again, I mentioned, we're having to assess and authorize capabilities, which are based on code. And initially you try to handle those like you do all of your other IT systems, and you find that doesn't work. So we've integrated security into our DevOps pipeline where a lot of these capabilities are produced. And we've gotten to a point now where we can actually get a capability through and approve it in a few days to as much as a week or so. And we've chopped a lot of process out of, for all of the systems that go through our ATO process. But the stuff the capabilities that are going through the DevOps pipeline, we're able to get done very quickly. Now, 3 days sounds great, right? And it does happen once in a while. but it's still not good enough. We need to deploy these capabilities faster because they're supporting critical missions. So how do we get there? And the only way we're going to get there is if we can get to some kind of automated decision making, right? We need to take the human as much as we can out of the loop here wherever possible, where it's appropriate. So if we can get to some level of automation within our DevOps pipeline where it goes through a series of checks and it's all automated when the developer's ready, receives some score that says, yeah, you're good enough, you get to go in ops right away. Or you're not quite good enough and somebody does need to take a look at this and make a decision. Or you're not good enough at all and hey, go back to go and start over. So that's what we're working towards, and I believe we're going to get there. But we're going to need industry's help to get there as well. Okay. So
we'll cover that a little bit later. Thank you. Appreciate that, Eric. Lisa, you and I had discussed transformation initiatives at Department of Defense. You've got a top 10. You're looking at kind of a zero trust network policy. You've got a lot of responsibility at the enterprise level for many of these initiatives across many disparate organizations. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the major impact of some of those initiatives?
Yeah, sure. And I'm going to count on somebody to stop me if I ramble on here because it's a big question in a broad space. So for starters, I think everyone's happy to see and report that the national cyber strategy and the defense cyber strategy are really pretty closely aligned. So yay, win number one. That's goodness. I won't tick through all of Mr. Deasy's, the DoD CIO, top 10 cyber initiatives. They're available in class online. But I think a fundamental tenet of what he's trying to do this POM and issue cycle and where his headspace is and where he's trying to lead the force is a more holistic approach. And I know that sounds hackneyed and yeah, who wouldn't, but really a more holistic approach across the enterprise, the DoD enterprise, to how we're looking at cybersecurity. I think he's been foot stomping that, in the POM and budget cycles, which are obviously out of sync and out of cycle with the technology advancement and evolution cycles, big challenge for the DoD, and I think for all of my peers here, just keeping pace with our existing mechanisms and processes. His foot stomping point has been, look, you can't piecemeal this. If we don't take an end-to-end look at cybersecurity to include workforce development and the systems and weapons platforms, we're not going to get there from here. And so within DISA, I'll just spend a second on what we're looking at tactically in my organization, and then a little bit more strategically that get after, I think, some of the tenets of his strategy. So tactically, we've spent the better part of the past couple of years now taking 10, 12 years worth of developmental and deployment work, a lot of it partnered with NSA at the perimeter and beyond, what's grown up as point solutions across the entire spectrum and trying to better integrate those. It's been a lot harder than I would have projected at the onset, but the engineers are wrapping their mind around it. And I think we're finally seeing some opportunities for convergence, which again, I think is in keeping with the general cybersecurity marketplace, at least in the tools that we're deploying. So some tactical work there. I would offer that a challenge in that space, and I've spent some time in industry, so I empathize and I understand, but the solutions that are coming out tend to be very, very much proprietary integrated solutions, and that poses a big challenge for us in just data rights and ownership. So, anything we can collectively do to advance that cause might take some creative thinking and some interesting business model changes. Lastly, on the strategic side, I would say that the two transformational things that I think are the biggest bang for the buck in my part of the mission space are getting after next generation identity. It's fundamental to everything we do. It's critical as we advance toward more automation and orchestration and human out of the loop decision making, which has to happen. And then, and we've got some interesting transformational things happening there that I'd love to chat about offline. And then secondly, how we're dealing with data rationalization and data sharing, whether we call it big data analytics, CSAC, whatever. If we don't get those two things right, we should probably just go home.
Go big or go home. Thank you very much, Lisa. So I think we've got some of the risk management perspective, engineering and tools perspective. Amy, you and I have had a discussion around a culture of awareness, the importance of policy and governance. making sure that the workforce is prepared as well. So could you describe a little bit about what HHS is doing with regard to some of those activities?
Great, thank you. So as I've been thinking about this conversation this morning, I was trying to craft a couple different themes around what I know is a super scintillating topic of governance policy and strategy, particularly when you sit amongst extraordinary colleagues who are really out often getting the bad guys and girls and trying to prevent them from accessing really important systems and mission-based activities. So from that vantage point, I would say a couple things. When we think about cybersecurity, and frankly, when we think about technology at HHS, one of the most important themes I try to talk about is that what we do needs to be two things and two things only, and if we do the two things, then we actually have an incredible runway. And the first is making sure that what we do is relevant. It's relevant to the business, it's relevant to the mission, it's relevant to the workforce, and because we are public citizens, it's relative and relevant to the American people. The second thing we need to do besides that is making sure it resonates. So if we are talking about technology to people who are running behavioral health programs, if we're talking about technology to folks who are working through child support enforcement activities, we need to speak in a language that is resonating with what they do, that it connects what we are about to what they are doing. And so in that space, I would say there's four major areas of activity that HHS is embarking upon. The first is in this cultural transformation world, making sure that, again, what we're doing, whether it's from a policy perspective, a governance perspective, or even a technology perspective, is relevant and resonates with our customer base. And we do that through thinking about our governance model. We start talking to people who are not just in the IT space, but we talk to our counterparts on the financial side. We engage our CFO community. We engage our budget community. We engage our acquisition community. Because when we're talking about addressing things like legacy technology, unsupported technology, these are discussions that have mission, business, and absolutely financial matters. And if you don't start talking about them early enough in the process, you end up not being able to take on things. And I loved the notion of the unicorn money. Haven't seen that in my 20-some-odd years in government. Would love to hear more about it. But if that does not come to pass at the next CXO conversation, we do need to be planful about that. So using those other governance forums to help drive that home, and then linking other aspects of risk management. A123 is a great example. There are provisions in that that ask agencies to really look at their risk management portfolio. At HHS, we've incorporated cyber as one piece of that. Second area in terms of doing some transformative work, and that is linking this to business processes. Folks I know are familiar with the System Development Lifecycle. EPLC is what we call it at HHS for the Enterprise Performance Lifecycle. We're trying to change that mantra to enabling performance across the lifecycle. And one of the key ways to do that is to start the cyber conversation earlier in the process so that people don't go through and think about building new things and deploying stuff, and then at the end go, oh yeah, and I need that ATO thing. Oh yeah, I got to go figure that out. No. Let's talk about it at the front end, and let's talk about it in a way that the cybersecurity is a key component to being successful in the work you want to do. Because we're all about sharing information. We just need to figure out how to share it in a safe and secure manner with the right people who have the right access to the right information at the right time. So let's talk about that earlier. So we're trying to modify our processes to identify that and talk about it. From a financial perspective, we're trying to rope in this dialogue about legacy technology and unsupported technology into our budget reviews. From a CIO perspective, having that dialogue, again, a year, 2 years even before you get down the pike, and asking the question, what do you see is on your horizon? What are the key high-value assets that you have in place now that are, unfortunately, being vulnerable to cyber attacks because they do not have supported technology? And getting those folks that are really not in the IT space to have that conversation, bring that CIO person together. The workforce is another critical area. We cannot do this by ourselves. We must do it with extraordinary people who sit with us and work for us. We recognize at HHS we do have real critical gaps in the cyber workforce. We often have folks who are taking on cyber roles and responsibilities, not necessarily with all the critical academic certifications in place, and sometimes they're wearing 2 and 3 and 4 different hats. We can't change that reality, but we do need to have, as you indicated, a cultural awareness of that and create pathways so that these individuals, if they do get sparked and excited about this notion of cybersecurity, how can we make that happen for them in a professional setting, and how can we leverage their experience to teach others and to be a model for others? And how can they be a model for those around them that, again, do not do the IT thing? The last piece I would just mention is policy. And again, policy is, again, I would say, in some cases perhaps not thought of as the most hottest, exciting thing to talk about, but it is really a fundamental backbone to what we do. And you think about law, you think about policy, and then you think about business process, technology, people, and it is a continuum. So we are looking to see where do we have opportunities to strengthen our most fundamental policies, whether it's around cyber or IT governance writ large. We at HHS, like a lot of other federal agencies, have had the opportunity to engage with our GAO colleagues. They have provided us with an opportunity to understand where we have some opportunities for growth and development. We're looking at that holistically and in partnership with them to see where do we have these policy gaps and what are the steps we need to take at a departmental level and then at an operating division level to make sure we're closing those gaps in these key areas. We have the FITARA scorecard. That focuses on FISMA. That's an incredible opportunity in and of itself to take, again, a more holistic view, just like you said, Lisa, and bring in other communities to this conversation about cyber. So it's not just an IT thing, it's an everybody thing.
Thank you, Amy. We will have a unicorn panel, but you will not be able to see it. Mark, you and I had a discussion around, insider threat, personnel, people are still, one of the weaker links out there with regard to security and awareness. We also had a discussion a little bit about the use of analytical capabilities in AI to be more proactive with regard to looking at some of the indicators in our infrastructure, and a little bit about cyber hygiene. So can you describe what you and your team are doing with regard to those activities?
So that's a lot to talk through in 5 minutes. But let's just take this up a level and realize why we exist to do what we're doing. We all have a specific mission to go do, and NSA is one of those organizations where it's a Department of Defense organization, is also an intelligence community organization. So if the end goal is to protect the mission, looking at those systems that go do what the mission actually is. I've had a privilege of sitting on a panel yesterday talking more data focused. Again, I thought some of the speakers had taken my talking points because they were talking about the mission. The mission was completely necessarily unrelated to what our mission was. So if you take that look at why the IT infrastructure actually exists and you want to do the mission correctly, which means you want to do it with a secure system, with secure people doing that mission, and you understand who those mission people are working the system, you have data on all that going through. NSA's mission is data. In order to look at the amounts of data we have to look at right now, we can't go do it with a human set of eyeballs. The volumes are ever increasing. A forum like this 20 years ago would have been each of you writing notes and maybe typing something up in an email. Well, now people are taking video of this and streaming this, and how much data is being created just out of this video session. So when you're then thinking about the mission and thinking about who's on those networks, you look at the data that's collected by those people performing the mission. Again, a security analyst cannot go look at that individually by itself and go figure out what's going on, which leads you then into automated intelligence and machine learning. Having somebody else create some algorithm to go look at the data to say, what is Mark actually doing on the network today? Is he doing what his job says he's supposed to be doing? Is he printing what he's supposed to be printing? Is he looking at the files he's supposed to be looking at? If I am, okay, allowed to go do that. If I'm not, then maybe I have another reason for doing what I'm doing, or maybe I don't. So that's the point where we're getting to, where we have to automate these additional processes on top of to look at people doing what they're supposed to be doing or not, or the machines themselves doing what they're doing or not. 3 tenets we look at when we're looking at the insider threat and network security is, are you doing what's fundamentally right to go do? Even though the networks are more complicated than they ever have been, there are still some basic things you need to know what's going on in the network. You need to know who's on the network, you need to be authorized, to Lisa's point about the authentication and personal identification. You need to patch your network. If your network's inherently not secure, then why are you using that? Right? You all have cell phones. You all, when iOS tells you to update it, you go update it. Same applies to whatever other IT system you're using. Comprehensive. You just don't let something hang out that, okay, I'm going to get to those 10 machines later on. No, when you're going to patch something, you're going to go do it completely. Look at it as an entirety. Look at your workforce as an entirety, and who's actually coming on those machines. Are they cleared? Do they have the responsibility to go do that? And remember, IT security is also more than just IT. There is physical security aspect of it, like who's going in the server rooms, right? Can you log who's going in the server rooms? Do you know, are they actually authorized to go be there? And then the third one is some focus measures. All IT systems are not created equal. You don't have the same logic and security as you do on your payroll system as you did on a weapon system. They're fundamentally different systems with fundamentally different missions. Therefore, the security of them should be different. So you do need to create focus measures for those individual systems as you put them online and you connect them to each other. So if you look at that holistic across the environment of doing the basics, doing it in total, but focusing it where you need to, you can cover everything you need to cover. Again, we'll take a talented workforce to go do that. But again, not everybody needs to be a smart IT to go do that. The security guard guarding your facility or looking at the access controls to your server room doesn't need to be an IT expert. They do need to know something, who's allowed in there. But again, looking at the right people to do the right missions is training. I'm an aerospace engineer by degree. I wasn't trained in IT. But 20 years later, after serving in the Navy as a nuclear engineer, I can figure out how to read an instruction and know what I'm supposed to go do. So let's not undersell the people short too just because they're not trained in IT. They don't necessarily know that they can't operate safely on the networks.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. So we have about 2 minutes left. Is there a question that anyone from the audience would like to ask of the panel? Yes, sir.
So I wonder,
you've got a...
thank you. Thank you for all coming. I really appreciate it. And I wanted... whoever would like to answer, the opinion on the technology about blockchain these days. Everyone keeps talking about it, and of course, as we know, Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is not like blockchain, right? And do you think blockchain can actually solve the problem that the government has with identification or asset tracking or any other et cetera things that blockchain can be utilized? Because I believe that it will, and it's coming, and it's going to be disrupting a lot of sectors, and government could be potentially one of them. But I just wanted everyone's opinion on what you guys thought about blockchain.
I have one.
Okay.
I'll throw it out there, and you guys can glom on. So I would tell you that that we've got a group within DISA who's looking at what applications might make sense for blockchain, and one of our lead engineers. Technology leaders has said, you know, this is a solution looking for a problem in our space. Where are we going to put it? So I think there is an application for it going forward, particularly as we're looking at the identity aspect and how we distribute our networks and apply it to a defense in-depth perspective. In fact, later this afternoon, I've got a meeting with our seniors aimed at the angstiness over cloud, right? And so even as we're busily selling cloud and DoD and migrating to mil cloud and commercial cloud, you know, there's a very visceral feeling to, oh wait, you mean you're going to put our metadata in the cloud? No, that's a bad idea. No, it's not a bad idea. I mean, we're going to have to go there, and we are going to go there. I would offer that a blockchain-like approach to how we manage and protect the DoD key stores, or subsets of them, for example, are probably part of our solution at some point in the future in that space.
Thank you, Lisa. Are there any other comments from the panel? I think we have 1 minute left. I guess just one quick question to throw out there as well. Or are there any other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
How are you looking at automating a DevOps pipeline? Like, how does that work?
Okay, I'll take that one, I guess. So what we're talking about there is kind of automating the security processes within the DevOps framework, right? So we have a DevOps pipeline that we run our capabilities through to help, you know, build those, assess those, do things like static code analysis, dynamic code analysis, dependency checks, you know, finding out, you know, are there dependencies out there that will break this app if we bring it into another environment where it's not going to have access to those. But so we do a really good job at building capabilities there. We want to do an even better job at integrating the security processes so that when something does come out of the DevOps pipeline at the end, it's ready to go. For us to remain ahead of our adversaries. We have to be better, but we got to be faster too, right? We got to be better and way faster. So I don't want to name any specific tools. I'm trying to avoid that actually. But we are. Let's say that we are very open to open source. You know, we do use some COTS products as well, but very open to open source products.
I think that's the end of the panel. I'd like to thank the panel very much for kind of giving the on-the-ground agency perspective for cybersecurity. Great dialogue here today about about what's going on at the strategic level. I think this gives the audience a good sense of some of the initiatives that are having an impact within your specific agencies. So thank you very much.